Dobar dan. Thank you for coming. I have a terrible way of pronouncing Croatian names. It's not easy at all. Is it Dučica? Dučica, there you go. Well, thank you to Dučica.
Thank you for Booksi.
And Booksi. And Matej as well for getting in contact as well. And Tomica, the three, the triangle, and Booksi and P.E.N International as well for allowing me to come here and perform these songs this evening. And I apologize, I don't have any Croatian. There are some Portuguese here, so boa noite, as pessoas de Portugal, because I live in Lisbon and I've been living there for 10 years now, and this is my second time in Croatia. I was with the P.E.N International 4 years ago. I stayed for a month and I was dying to get back for a long time, and Tomica invited me back, and I managed to be here for 3 weeks. And this is really special for me to be able to play these songs. It's quite nerve-wracking because normally I released this album this year, and I always performed it with a drummer, a guitar player, a bass player, so I had people with me. So this is a very stripped down, raw performance, but maybe that's also works because these songs, there's 8 songs on the album, which is on this lovely vinyl here. So if you want to buy a vinyl, you're very welcome, because I want to leave them in Croatia. I don't want to bring them back, so I'll find a way to get rid of them, but you're very welcome to purchase any vinyls or CDs if you like some of what you hear. Because this album is quite special. I was very lucky. I went to Brazil at the beginning of 2020, end of 2019, for almost 3 months, and I was staying in a Zen Buddhist monastery in the middle of the jungle, and that's the view of from where I was writing the song. So you can imagine it was beautiful. There was no Wi-Fi. I had enough food to last for a few weeks. When there was no food left, I left the monastery. There were some monks living in the jungle about 3 kilometers away who didn't want to speak to me, which was fine, and I had all this time, and so I decided to try to write a song every day, 1 song a day, and just for no objective, just as a task, with no idea what was going to happen. And I wrote all these songs with a mobile phone, so I would write a song and then I recorded it at the end of the day. And then the next day, it was like, wow, as musicians here, this feeling of kind of the miracle of composing, you kind of go, well, I'll go again. And I kept doing this, getting deeper and deeper into the zone. And then I came back from Brazil, and COVID had just begun. So suddenly there was no concerts, there was no one to play, and I had all these songs on my phone. And you can hear the rain, and you can hear birds, you can hear the night sounds, because it all came through just me and the guitar in this glass house, which had a natural reverb acoustic sound, which was kind of amazing, and I kind of sang into the room. But then a few months into COVID, my colleague, friend, producer asked me if I had any songs, and I told him, well, I've done this thing, but I don't know if I want to record them again. And I sent him what I had, and he said, this is perfect. The sound is incredible. Let's try and use all these songs and record an album, and we'll add some percussion and bass. So on the album, it's all the recordings from the monastery, and then a little bit of putting on some guitar over it and things like that after the fact. But nothing was changed, no lyrics could be adjusted, even though of course you want to rewrite some things, but I couldn't do that. So it was really a very special process, and because there was no gigs or anything like that, it became a solo record called Loafing Hero, because I have a band called the Loafing Heroes. Loafing is a long project. We've had 6 albums over the last 10 years, and so this time it was just a very solo project. And the idea tonight is I'll play 8 of these songs and show you some images from where I was, and the sketches I started drawing, very primitive, very naive, because I hadn't drawn since I was, I think, 8 years old. And I decided to draw, as all these drawings from the album are different symbols from the different songs. So everything became a kind of a sketchbook feel. And that's why I think it's part of the songs. It's for interesting for you to hear the relationship between the songs and the stories. And there was another reason when I was there. I went up to the north of Brazil to a place called Iguatu. The last song was called Iguatu because I had a cousin there who was a priest before I was born and went up to Iguatu in the middle of the northeast Brazil in the 1970s, and he drowned in a river at the age of 27. 48 years later, I went to visit this village in the northeast Brazil, one of the poorest parts of Brazil, but I'll explain a little bit about that when I come to the song. So many things happened, many synchronicities happened, and yeah, so I think I'll just start with the music, I guess. But I just wanted to show you. So this is the house I was in. This is from facing the house. You can see kind of a little paradise in the middle of nowhere, really in the state of Espírito Santo, which is below Bahia and above Rio de Janeiro, a very small state, not very well known by many people, in the interior, the Mata Atlântica, the rainforest there. And the name of the album is called Jabuti, which is a Brazilian Portuguese word for a river turtle. And jabutis, yes, they live in the rivers, and they're big, multicolored turtles. And there was two of them roaming around outside the house at the time. And the jabuti is a very important kind of creature for the indigenous Tupi-Guarani peoples. It can mean, for some, it can mean that which breathes nothing. And I think it's quite beautiful, the breathing of the nothing. And the jabuti became the kind of the title of the record, which I decided to draw. And there you go again. That's a little bit, just 100 meters from where I was staying as well. So very miraculous kind of landscape in Brazil. And I'm very, very attached to Brazil. I've been there 4 times, and I think, as you know, there'll be an election this Sunday, which really is crucial, I think, for the world. And it's very scary because Brazil is really divided between 2 extremes right now. And in the elections on Sunday, I think it's going to affect a lot of us, whatever happens that day, because they have a very nasty leader in power, and it's going to be a close race. So hopefully on Monday morning we'll wake up to a more hopeful Brazil, but we'll see. So Brazil is full of extremes. It has the best and the worst of mankind, and really the extremes of both. So, and also in this album, we're here in Booksi, but the language is important. Because 3 of the songs have Portuguese titles: Lusco Fusco, Vagamundo, which is the first song I'll play and the first song of the album, and Iguatu as well. And actually there's a 4th word, Sertão, which I'll get into as well. So this idea of language and land, or as my friend James Joyce would say, landuage, you know, the language and the land coming together. There was a Brazilian poet, Leminski, who talked about lingua was linguare, so he plays with it, the idea of literally the language and the land merging together. And I, as a modernist or someone who reads Joyce, I was very much sympathetic to this idea that's very alive in a lot of the Brazilian poets as well, especially a great poet called João Guimarães Rosa, who I'll get into as well. So I hope you don't mind me just giving you context between the songs and the literature, because it's going to be very raw, the actual songs. And there's my friend, a frog. So there was lots of frogs around. So this is the first song. It's called Vagamundo, which is a lovely word. I don't know if it's used too much, but the play with obviously the vagabond, the vagabundo, and of course wandering the world, vagamundo. So I hope you enjoy, and thank you for your patience in listening to this little trip we'll do together. Cosmic serpent, caraway, elephants, Saturday moods, refugees, you and me. Strategic reality, poetic reality. Oh, how I love all the useless visions and things. We are in the mesh again. We are in the mesh again. We are in the mesh, 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 the mesh. Nature really knows how to die, but humans know mostly how to kill. Vagabundo, vagabundo, vagabundo. Without the forest there is no poet. Without the poet there is no memory. Vagabundo, 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 vagabundo. Cosmic serpent, caraway, elephants, Saturday moods, refugees, you and me. Strategic reality, poetic reality. Oh, how I love all the useless visions and things. We are in the mesh again. We are in the mesh again. We are in the mesh, the mesh, the mesh, the mesh, the mesh, the mesh, the mesh. We are in the mesh again. We are in the mesh again. We are in the mesh, the mesh, the mesh, the mesh, the mesh, the mesh, the mesh. Verbi vocal visual. The beginning is the warning. The middle is the sound dance. We're in the mesh, the mesh, the mesh, the mesh. We're in the mesh again. We're in the mesh again. Mesh, the 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 hope you can all hear me. You can all hear me okay from there? Okay, I'll just move on with it because I'll be saying things about other things throughout the concert. This song is called Subterranean. Yeah. I, I'm walking the subterranean road. Those energies above were just too much for me. Pop in my ears everywhere I go. I'm going to the garden to find my orchid, to find my orchid. How can I see? I, Oblivion, I married you long ago. Your word melts in my mouth. You melt everything. Then Mercury, interpret this reality. You could always change it for me from melancholy. But Saturn never listened to you. So lover, you can keep that book, and I'll return to the subterranean world. I'm walking the subterranean road. I'm dreaming of oblivion's load. I'm holding what the orchid sowed. I'm deciphering Mercury's code. But I'm leaving Saturn's book with you.
So this next song is called Lusco Fusco. It's one of my favorite Portuguese words. It's when, I guess it's twilight or dusk, just after the sun goes down, hence the picture. There was just amazing light all the time, and you're in your own little world. Well, I wasn't alone, as you can see. There was lots of frogs, there was lizards, there was snakes, there was birds, there was monkeys, there were strange other creatures making sounds at night. So I was very much in a big company there, and the Lusco Fusco is that kind of middle thing. On Wednesday we had a talk about Joyce, and I played this then. I'm saying we because I guess I'm a splintered personality with the plurality of the subject going on, but the Lusco Fusco is being thrown into the middle of things. I think it was a Kierkegaard who once said, the philosopher only brings you to the end of life, but the poet throws you into the middle of life. And this is the Lusco Fusco song that I always wanted to write a song called Lusco Fusco. So I hope you enjoy this Lusco Fusco moment. It's a word not really used that much in Brazil, it's more in Portugal, because Portugal has far longer sunsets than they do around the equator. Like Ireland, actually, Ireland and Portugal have very slow sunsets. So we have plenty of time for the Lusco Fusco, and everyone looks good in the Lusco Fusco as well. So here we go. So calm, release, in the twilight, living in between. The center is everywhere, open,
Surrender, begin anywhere. You will love again. You will love again the stranger who was your friend. Devastation, rebirth, time can be your friend again. Non-attachment, simplicity, strong frequencies in the evening. Give wine, give bread to the ghost who loved you all your life. You will love again. You will love again the stranger who was your friend. Changing, maybe things are coming back. Things are changing, maybe things are coming back. I'm at the crossroads again, that place I really like. In the middle of our lives, in the middle of our lives, I found myself in a dark wood where the straight way was crooked. In the middle of our lives, in the middle of our lives, I found myself in a dark wood where the straight way was crooked. You know who said that? Said that. Let's go, let's go. Let's go, let's go. Let's go, let's go. Let's go, let's go. We're running through the wood and I'm feeling good, disorientated, alarmingly alive. To be or not to be, that is not the question. Question is, are you flourishing? Let's go, let's go. No need to say sorry, I'm dreaming of a train in the evening. It's disappearing fast into the darkness, fast into the darkness. Let's go, let's go. I saw an anteater out my window with his big long snout, looking cranky. The light of the full moon shining on him. The light of the full moon was shining on him. The light of the full moon was heavy, 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 heavy on my mind. Let's go, let's go. Let's go, let's go.
muito obrigado. Okay, this is the 4th track of 8. So, hope you're enjoying yourselves. It's mellow. It's a good time to be mellow, and then you can go out and dance into the forest later. This song is called Darkening Flame, and I have another little naive sketch here. It's one of the symbols on the record, and some of the themes of this record is about the dead are never really dead. You know, they come back to haunt you, or they come back to give you some kind of hints or suggestions for finding out things which you didn't know consciously but you knew unconsciously. And for example, meeting the remains and the story of my cousin just brought back so many things that made sense before I even knew the story of my cousin. And this song's about a friend who died also young, in his early 30s, and he was in the Loafing Heroes. And one of the last songs, he was a great songwriter, and one of the last songs he wrote, he sent to me, it was called Darkening Horse. And he died a few weeks later, and tragically, very suddenly. He was one of these people, he could seduce anyone in the room, adorable, very kind, generous, but his own worst enemy. He was a person who could say no to nothing. And he's one of these kind of bright sparks, really a darkening flame. And so this song on the 4th day was written for my friend Mick. I remember when we were boys, doppelgangers under the sun. I was just a shy one, but with you I was a star. All the bad girls wanted you, and all the girls were bad. You were beautiful, you shone so bright. Goodbye, my friend. Goodbye, my friend. You drank up the night, turning darkness into light. The only major flaw you had was saying yes to everything. You're a darkening horse, galloping into oblivion. You're a darkening flame, you never did come back again. Goodbye, my friend. Goodbye, my friend. We love you. We love you. Goodbye, my friend. Okay, now we're going to, thank you very much again. We're going to go into side part 2 of the album. This song is called Sertão. I guess the third of 4 titles with a Portuguese word, but it's particularly Brazilian word, a region of Brazil, the Sertão. I don't know who's been to Brazil here. I know Tomitza has a few times, and someone over here. Ah, Diane, welcome Diane. Good to see you. So I'm sure you know all about the Sertão. Sertão is a very special region. It covers kind of all over the state of Bahia, the interior, some of North Minas Gerais, up to Ceará, a vast area of extreme dry lands and shrubs, which has heavy rainfalls at some times of the year.
Some people call it the heart of Brazil. If the Amazon is the lungs of Brazil, the Sertão is the heart of Brazil. It's produced some of their greatest poets, Carlos Drummond de Andrade, a great poet from Minas Gerais, and for me the great novel of Brazil called The Grande Sertão Veredas. Literally, it's hard to translate Sertão. It could be backlands or drylands or the hinterlands, but this book by João Guimarães Rosa was published in 1956. It's a 450-page, one long monologue, but it goes into all kinds of places and begins with the word no nada. It's a word, he invents many words, no nada in one word, which could mean into the nothing or it is nothing, and ends with the word travessia, a crossing. And it's about this guy called Rio Baldo. Rio being river, Baldo could be something that's lacking in the river, but the place is full of rivers. There are rivers everywhere, great rivers, small rivers, streams. And it's about him being this kind of bandido called a Jogunso, living in this period in this area of Brazil, this Sertão. And it's an extraordinary tale of the human spirit. It's extremely difficult to translate. And there was a terrible translation in English in the 60s. There's going to be another translation coming out in the next 2 or 3 years, which I'm sure will be far greater. But it's one of these books that, as you know, being Croatian, the great Croatian writer, it's very difficult to capture in other languages. But if you can ever pick it up and just read or hear some of the language, a bit like a Finnegan's Wake, but easier in some ways, except it's in Brazilian Portuguese. So this was inspired. I was in the Sertão where my cousin lived and died, and yeah, that's what I'll say about that. So this is called Sertão. Yeah. By the way, that's a lovely little drawing I did. But I'm copying. There was these kind of drawings of the Sertão by a wonderful kind of artist called Potti, who used to do all the covers of João Guimarães' books. João Guimarães Rosa only wrote one massive novel, but lots of large stories, and he always had the same kind of artist with him. And so it's me kind of stealing many of the sketches, me copying some of the sketches, and you can see the devil over here and various strange animals, not quite human, and of course, as we know, nothing has really changed in Brazil. The devil and the God are mixed in together. You know, you have the elections happening now. One person, Bolsonaro, telling the other person is a Satanist, when Bolsonaro couldn't be more un-Christian as possible because he has no values, and yet he plays with this perception of being a religious person. And so Brazil is full of spirituality, religions, hysteria. Some of it absolutely beautiful, some of it dreadful, and the Sertão is that mix. There's not a binary as such, but an intermingling of all these things. And the writer João Guimarães Rosa captures this mixture of the rational and the irrational, all fusing into one in Sertão. No nada. O real não está. O real não está no centro, e no meio de travessia. Here in the dry lands, all this beauty is owned by nobody in the dry lands. Neither God nor the devil are forgotten here in the dry lands. Wasteland grows, and woe to him who harbors endless wastelands within. These dark geographies that have no need for space or time in the dry lands, where the criminals are good and the whores are holy in the dry lands.
Idosa do sertão, padroeira, minha vida, vim de lá, volto mais não, vim de lá, volto mais não.
Vala, I hope you can hear all the drums that were going crazy in that. So I was hoping myself and Ina would do some noise, but a very talented person here who's in Montenegro making plays and doing all kinds of stuff. So it's just so great to actually be here playing these songs in some raw form. If they can't stand up alone, then they can't stand up at all. But that song can have a backbeat that can be noisy as well. So you heard the most stripped down version. There's the hands, what we do with our hands. How could Italians speak without moving their hands? But this is a hand, it's my hand. And you can see there's some symbols there, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, that are coming back to haunt us. And this song was a little bit of a comic relief in a way, because the songs are quite emotional and it tends, this is too, but it might be the pop song in relief. It has a title which I borrowed from my friend James Joyce, and if you can bear with me, I'll read a little passage from Ulysses before I go into the song, because the song is called Love Loves to Love, Love. Love loves to love, love. Nurse loves the new chemist. Constable 14A loves Mary Kelly. Gertie McDowell loves the boy that has a bicycle. MB loves a fair gentleman. Li Chi Han lovey up, kissy chow, poo chow. Jumbo the elephant loves Alice the elephant. Old Mr. Verschoyle with the ear trumpet loves old Mrs. Verschoyle with the turned in eye. The man in the brown Macintosh loves a lady who is dead. His Majesty the King loves Her Majesty the Queen. Mrs. Norman W. Tupper loves Officer Taylor. You love a certain person, and this person loves that other person, because everybody loves somebody, but God loves everybody. Love loves to love, love. Morning and I put some bread to remind me that space and time are my friend. I knew you will begin full of things that have never been. Our doubt is our passion, our energy's alive. I put on a suit to get ready for a wedding for one of the best friends that I had. It was outside, the sun was shining, we started dancing to the madness of love. There is no faith without a leap, there is no love. But remember to hang out with those who fit your future and not just your past. Study Zen, to study yourself to forget yourself. Forget yourself to be one with everything and everyone. Love loves to love, love. Love loves to love, love. Alright. I want a heart that listens, a body that listens, a brain that's free from time. The beings I love are creatures. They were born by chance and they will die. Love loves to love, love. Love loves to love, love. Love loves to love, love. Alright. It's not irritating to be where you are. It's only irritating to think you'd like to be somewhere else. It's not irritating to be where you are. It's only irritating to think you'd like to be somewhere else. Whoa, oh, oh. So you know, love loves to love, love. Love loves to love, love. Love loves to love, love. Alright. Woo-hoo. Takes the breath, my friend. That's reality. Woo-hoo. Alright. Oh, love loves to love, love. Love loves to love, love. Alright. Uh-oh. I'm walking down to the sea.
empty of memory, full of dreams. I'm walking down to sea, empty of sadness, full of streams. I'm walking down to the sea.
All right, we're almost there. We've got maybe 2.5 songs to go. This song is called "What's Left Then." It's actually the first song I wrote on of these days in the monastery, and it was good to begin with a song called "What's Left Then," and then right from there. So, yeah, to whom are we speaking? Who's out there? This is the song. I'll just go on. Okay. Everyone's okay? I think it's the first time I've been in an inside place when people are not smoking. And I've kind of been vaguely trying to keep up with smoking. I had 1 cigarette today, and I'm definitely going to have one after this. But it doesn't really matter when you're in Zagreb, because I go into a bar and it feels like I've smoked 100 cigarettes when I come out. And I'm not complaining. It's kind of nice to be back in the Ireland I used to love. But yeah, so this is quite fresh here, you know. And yeah, so not a good place to give up cigarettes, but it's only tobacco, you know. It's okay. There's worse things out there. So I don't know why I thought about that, but yeah, it's just nice to play to a sober. Oh, there's beer here. Look, there is a beer. Someone's broken the law. Oh, I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining.
What's left then? Oh, what's left then? Oh, I'm prone to visiting the old folks' home, standing on a chair and watching them stare. Then I lie down on the mat and I feel myself growing fat. I know they know what time is, I know they know what space is. It's an experience. Ooh, it's an experience. What's left then? Oh, what's left then? Oh, monsters of masochism took a hold of my heart again. She's hurting everyone because she's hurting everywhere. You stay with the pain because it feels like home in the rain. She knows I know what time is, she knows I know what space is. It's an experience. Ooh, it's an experience. Listen to the body. This is my body. Listen to the body. This is my body. what's left then. Oh.
That drawing is not by me, that's by Pucci, the guy I was talking about, another collection of, the first collection of stories that João Guimarães Rosa published, Sagarana. But I found this after the fact and I kind of related to it. Someone with guitar, frog smoking a pipe, and a turtle and a tree. What else do you need? You know, so there you go. That's kind of the mood that I was in and where I was at. So tapping into it, I found that a year after writing these songs. This final song, it's a long song, it's more of a poem, I think before I wanted to go into that song, I just wanted to maybe play like a 2-minute song from Brazil, just a little snippet of it to get a feel. It was on his first album, Caetano Veloso. He's kind of an icon at this stage. He's 80 years of age, turned 80 this year, and he's out canvassing for the future of Brazil, the passion of the man. He has so many albums, at least 50, but on his first album called Domingo back in 1967, very timid, and he made an album with Gal Costa. Anyone know Caetano Veloso? Yeah, some people. Diana, of course. Yeah. Is there a Brazilian here? No. Did you know Caetano? No? Okay, well anyway. Check him out, because especially his 70s records, very special, and they sound very fresh to this day. But this is just it began with kind of a little bit of nostalgia, the Portuguese word saudade, but the Brazilians, you can tell a lot by the Brazilians and the Portuguese, the way they pronounce the word saudade. When I hear the Portuguese saying saudade, it's like they're putting a knife in their heart, you know, saudade. Well, there's equal sadness in the samba music, but when they sing saudade, it's pain, but let's celebrate and somehow overcome it. Saudade, you know. So another little anecdote, or just a digression, the differences in the language, what translation, and I know there's a few translators in here, Shelke and Diane and Tomica, but I had the pleasure of watching that cartoon, or Frozen. We all know Frozen, yeah? Let It Go. If you have any nephews or nieces or children, I'm sure you had this ringing in your ears for about a year or two. But I had the opportunity to see Frozen in Portuguese and Frozen in Brazilian Portuguese. And the famous song, Let It Go, you know. It's funny, in the Portuguese version, they translate it as Já passou, like it's already gone. There's a really sad song called Já passou by Chico Buarque. It's really sad, you know. And I watched Frozen in Portuguese and it was really sad. Já passou. And then I watched it in Brazilian Portuguese, and it was like a celebration. The translation of that song was Livre estou, I am free, I am free. So that just tells you a little bit, even in a translation, this is in the last few years, the different attitudes, maintaining that kind of já passou versus it has already gone to I am free. There's two ways of looking at things. So, yes. And this song is called Que Me Dera. Just a 2-minute little interlude before I go into the final song, Iguatu. And an excuse to try to sing a song in Portuguese from Brazil.
Ai, que me dera voltar, que me dera dia de ter de novo alegria, Bahia no coração. Ai, que me dera voltar, que me dera dia de ter de novo alegria, Bahia no coração. Ai, água clara que não tem fim, não há outra canção em mim, que saudade. Ai, que me dera voltar, que me dera dia de ter de novo alegria, Bahia no coração. Ai, água clara que não tem fim, não há outra canção em mim, que saudade. me dera, voltar quem me dera dia, de ter de novo alegria. Oh my amor feliz, oh my amor feliz, oh my amor feliz, oh my amor feliz. Lua de São Jorge, lua brasileira, lua de São Jorge, lua brasileira. Lua de São Jorge, lua brasileira, lua de São Jorge, lua brasileira.
Okay, so we're on the final track, and I've been very faithful to the album. I played it straight through, from beginning to end, so you've got a sense of it with that interlude by Caetano. And then our drawing, that's the area of the Sertão. You can see the river Jaguaribe. Fortaleza Iguatu is there, you can see in the northeast of Brazil. And these huge rivers, people forget, they know about the Amazon River, but there are other extraordinarily large, volatile rivers. And my cousin, stupidly enough, decided to go for a swim in one of these enormous rivers. Jaguaribe is known as the largest dry river in Brazil, because there is no river for about 6 or 7 months, and then within the space of a month the rains come down in biblical, epic volumes, and it rises so high, and it's full of whirlpools, and it floods the towns, and it's extreme, massive river that makes its way towards the Atlantic. But it's one of these rivers that, again, sums up so much of Brazil. Empty, dry, there won't be rain. When I arrived in Iguatu, it actually just started raining for the first time in 8 months. They hadn't had a drop of rain, and then the rains come. They get more rain in 2 months than we probably would have here in a few years. It's so heavy, and then there's nothing again. And just to show you, there's a picture of my cousin Patrick with a funky shirt. I met when I went there finally in 2020. He died in 1973 at the age of 27. I didn't know what to expect. I was calling all these people beforehand. His 2 sisters are still alive, living in the south of Ireland, and obviously they were broken-hearted by it. He came from one of the poorest, most beautiful parts of Ireland, Kerry, and he went off in the early 70s to Brazil, which was a very interesting time as well. It was a type of dictatorship, but also Brazil had just won the World Cup for the 3rd time with Pelé in 1970. It was the birth of all the bossa nova and tropicalia music movements. Many things were going on, but there was also a period where they called them the restaurantes, where everyone from the north was moving down into Sao Paulo and Rio to find a new life, and this was the beginning of the slums and the favelas as well. So a very interesting time then, and he fell in love with it immediately. And he said after a few months to his superior, "I never want to leave Iguatu." Well, his wish was granted, and he played guitar as well. As I talked to some people, they kind of said he was beautiful. It didn't sound like he was a bit of a priest, it was quite interesting, but it was an interesting period because a lot of volunteers were coming over from Ireland and other places, and there was a time of liberation theology. I don't know if you know this period where Catholic priests were kind of the only social structure there to help the forgotten Brazil, the abandoned Brazil. As one priest said very pertinently, in Brazil, when you help the poor, you're treated like a saint. When you ask the question why they are poor, you're called a communist. And this is the big problem, in Brazil. It's okay to give your life over, but don't question it. Keep them poor, but let's help them. And this was a period of liberation theology, which kind of fused Marxism and Christian doctrine together. And of course, it was kicked out by the early 80s. It was hard to continue as a liberal theologian at that time. So there was a period with these figures. And there's another picture which they gave me, him smiling by the river. He was always smiling. And when I went there, I didn't know what to expect, as I said, but there's a street named after him called Rua Padre Patricio, and he's buried on the altar of the church. It was just extraordinary. I didn't know, the only person there. And they did a mass when I was there, and I met all these kinds of people. It was extraordinarily overwhelming for them as well, because nobody comes to visit Iguatu, and for me it just answered a lot of questions, and for them as well. And we spent a few days, and many people had stories,
and there was a portrait of him on the wall. He looked just like my nephew, so it was a very moving thing. And ironically, strangely enough, this song I wrote before going up to Iguatu. It was in the monastery, and then I made the journey, thousands of kilometers, to get to the place of Iguatu. So this is the final song, and an ode to, and I said, the dead never die, or they're waiting for you to listen, to come back to them. And this really was an ode to Patrick, who could have been forgotten. And just as there's a map, there's interesting because there's also a myth called High Brazil. If you look at the far, this little Brazil, you see this little thing, Brazil? That's a map from the 14th century. There was a mythology in Irish culture and amongst some of the kind of medieval monks that there was a place called High Brazil, which means in Irish, literally, high being a descendant from the place of goodness or beauty. And it was meant to be this tropical island somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic. And it was on maps for about 100 years, from kind of 13th, 14th, 15th century, and the myth of High Brazil. And there's still, of course, today people say that Brazil, the word Brazil, comes from the dye wood, the Brazil wood, that was given to the name. It had a few different names. The Tupi-Guarani people called it Pindorama, which was kind of land of the palm trees around the coast. And then the Portuguese called it the Terra de Vera Cruz, the land of the true cross. Very Christian Portuguese coming when they landed in 1500. Also in Bahia, just in gone now. Bahia is the state where it has the most sertão. So it's a nice myth, and of course, as Fernando Pessoa said, myth is nothing that is everything. So they mightn't be true, but they're very true in other ways. So you can go along with this idea of High Brazil and crossing the Caribbean Sea. And I just brought that picture for Tomitsa because I know he likes large cats. This is actually a photograph I didn't take, but it's a real photograph that was taken 2 years ago of a jaguar was seen in the interior of Brazil. Beautiful animal, amazing photograph. I think it was one of these awards, and it was kind of photograph of the year because it's called the Jaguaribe, the river of jaguars. There are no jaguars around there anymore, but that's what it was called. That is still what it's called. And that's a photograph I took of the Jaguaribe. When I went there, there was no river. So the raindrops were just coming, and they sent me pictures 3 months later, and it was a massive river. So there you go. So, without further ado, I'll play my final song, and thank you for listening to my stories. I really appreciate it. It's lovely to be able to play them and to communicate this little journey before we can all move on with our lives. So sit back. I'm afraid you don't have a cigarette or a coffee or anything, and you're looking at me with death eyes because it's a long track. It's a poem. Believe me, I'll be more exhausted than you by the end. And as I said, as my manager here, Matej, there are records for sale, so don't be shy. Get ready for Christmas, it's coming up, or Halloween. There are still some records and some CDs here, which I promise you won't be disappointed. It's only a few beers. I read a line from a Brazilian poet who said, "Absence is a presence in me." Reading a poem is a slow act of contemplation, in a moment of the day that the devil cannot find. I was born when the sun and Pluto fought for my location, the burning, brightest, hottest giver of life, the furthest, coldest, darkest star deep inside the soul. I'm caught between absolute defeat and absolute desire. Under a canopy of stars, we are wanderers.
We have been a civilization of sky worshippers, children of a celestial father. The forests became monstrous, but in the shadows they have always been our home. It is time for the plants, the animals, the stones to return again, to stay loyal to the earth. When I opened my eyes, it brought me back to when my brother died, 20 years ago today. His spirit still crackles in my mind's eye. His charming sneer wakes me up to vitality again. I'm traveling now to the luminous green continent of Brazil, full of magic, full of pain, full of sensuality, full of rain, to find another one of my kin. On my way I saw thousands of sub-Saharan Africans in chains, forced over in slave ships, Tupi and Guarani, driven from the coast, desperate folk from Ireland arriving in sickly or dead in coffin ships. This is tropical truth. This is Celtic truth. This is high Brazil, in the Kerry Brazilian Sea. Well, I sauntered up to the Sertão in the northeast to a town called Iguatu to find the river where my cousin drowned in 1973. They called the river the Jaguaribe. They called it the dry river, but as his sister Joan said, there was nothing dry about it that day. Patrick was born in Castle Cove, Kerry. He just had that glow. He became a redemptorist priest and headed off to Brazil. He heard the music, he sang the songs, wore the shirt, he said the mass. He laughed everywhere he went. He used to sing songs about the devil, who supposedly was living down in Kerry, and who had the face of a British soldier. He used to make up the verses here and there. And the locals, well, they will remember him. We are the only creatures who are allowed to feel we don't belong here. While we seem to be there, our identity and presence can be absent completely. Tupi and Guarani, African and Irish, all the love songs are sad, all the war songs are happy. Longing is the loss of life, and loss is a life of longing. This is tropical truth. This is Celtic truth. Roger Caseman knew a thing or two about these truths. This is high Brazil, in the Kerry Brazilian Sea. This is real absence. Inside me, I sing for the cousins. I sing for the ancestors. My cousin, my brother, my kin, my friends, the rivers, mountains, trees, missions, rivers, memories. Real absence is embodied presence in me.
Bartholomew. Thank you. Thank you, Ivana. Great for Hong Kong. Luka Belani. Thank you, Booksi. Thank you, Matej.